What's up everyone, Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick and I have an album review for you. So one that wasn't necessarily on my radar, but I found it and I jammed it and I had to review it, was the newest offering from Vouna. I think that's how you pronounce it. The album is Atropos. I think that's also how you pronounce that. Probably off on both. I don't know. My track record isn't great. This comes out on the 16th of July on Profound Lore Records. This is this band's second release, and this is a one-woman atmospheric blackened doom project. But when I say doom, I pretty much mean funeral doom on this. This is slow, sludgy, but atmospheric is definitely right. And for everyone that notices when we say dissonant or lush or any of those keywords, I'm gonna do my best not to say them, but it's probably gonna happen. Now, before I get into the actual tracks, the production on here I have to talk about because it's amazing and I think there's a good reason for it. This album was mixed by Greg Chandler of Esoteric and then mastered by Don Louds of Cruciamentum. Both bands I have tremendous respect for. Esoteric is one of my favorite funeral doom bands, and Cruciamentum makes some of the filthiest death metal from England out there right now. And both of their signature sounds, I guess for their bands, show up on here. Now, the opening track, Highest Mountain, starts off with, I believe, a harp. I think it's a harp, either that or it's a really cool, clean tone. But it kind of carries out this really dreary melody, and believe me, dreary is the feel on this. And then these higher register female vocals start coming in, and I gotta say the vocal performance on here alone is incredible. It's mostly clean vocals, but there are some occasional moments where she does growl, but she has some accompaniment on that one. Now, this track is all clean vocals, and I like how it slowly builds. All of a sudden, this big, doomy guitar tone comes in, and I mean, it is massively sludgy. The bass is up in the mix, the drums start coming in, and it's funeral doom. Drums are slow, but what I like about funeral doom is the drums are mostly there to accent the big, heavy riffs, and they do a great job on here. Now, while she opens up more like ethereal with the vocals, it takes a shift towards more like kind of sinister wailing in the background to these giant heavy riffs. And like most funeral doom, it kind of shifts around. Now, while it starts off very funeral doom-ish, it shifts to more like almost death doom territory. It gets a little bit chuggier, a little bit heavier, kind of like Hooded Menace. But the overall dreary, dirge-like feel is kept throughout. Even in its heaviest moments, there's a couple of sections on here that have blast beats, but at no point does it feel aggressive. It always feels somber and dreary and just very oppressive. Possibly my favorite track on here is the second track though. Vanish, I think, is easily the heaviest song. This is where you hear Yana Burkus, the woman behind this band, come out and start using some harsh vocals, but she's accompanied by Nathan Weaver of Wolves of the Throne Room, who throws in some deep, cavernous growls. And, you know, cavernous is kind of a thing on here. At its heaviest moments, it screams very cavernous death doom or funeral doom. But when it gets to be more etherical, and believe me, it does, that's where the synths take over. And Jesus, the synths on here are amazing. Big, like lush synths, there's the word, just sort of take over and create this really just interesting atmosphere. Like, honestly, me being like, you know, a big movie buff too, I kept thinking of like sci-fi horror sort of mix. Like, it has that sort of like cold void of space and just like droning on a couple of single notes and sort of layering them and making a harmony out of it, but making sure it feels ominous. That is what they do on here, and they do such an excellent job. And much like the Highest Mountain, this one has a really pronounced death doom section. Now, where Highest Mountain actually brings in some blasts in there and it kind of gets like just flat out death metal for a second, this has just a flat out death doom section. It's just chugging right along and it adds some extra heft, and she is screaming these blackened shrieks that just fit perfectly. There are a lot of songwriting dynamics on display here, and the transitions are absolutely beautiful. The whole feel of it is very like cinematic, like it always moves forward. There's really not a lot of repeating parts. You don't hear a lot of like sections where, say, it starts off with one signature riff, like a really great melody, it won't necessarily return to that, but it will keep building. And kind of the thing on here, especially on the last track, What Once Was, is every section feels like the big closer. And then it kind of drones out for a little bit, and then boom, the next section comes out, which kind of surpasses the one before it in terms of like levels of epic, gloomy, dreary, gothic, whatever you want to call it, and just blows the previous one out of the water. I really like that dynamic. It really doesn't get played very much. Like, you kind of hear it maybe in prog, but prog you still have a lot of refrains back to other spots. This is almost always moving forward in terms of the song. Like, it's just going to keep moving. And of course, it'll make sure to keep it nice and dreary and dirge-like throughout the entire thing. The mood on this, of course, it's funeral doom / black metal / atmospheric, whatever. It's dark. It is dark, it's foreboding, it's oppressive, kind of depressive in spots. The way she emotes with her vocals, I think, is one of the big key things. Now, there are long sections without vocals on here, but when she is singing, it is like very forlorn. Like, none of this feels like evil. I mean, it's dark, but dark like in a like emotional sense. Like, it feels very depressing. There are some sections on here that I thought sounded a little bit more uplifting. There is a really cool vocal melody on Vanish that it sort of ascends rather than descends. That's kind of the thing, is just descending into a black pit of despair where this album lives. But there are some spots that seem like uplifting. I mean, towards the end of Once What Was, it has this very epic soaring melody, and more of the black metal shows through there. The black metal aspects, I have to say, aren't like the biggest contributors here. Most of it is doom and ambience, and that really works. The black metal stuff, I think, is used more sparingly. You do get a couple of sections with some blackened tremolo and like some more like atmospheric dissonant riffing, but most of the time this moves at a snail's pace and just keeps building the emotion. But while it spends a lot of time being atmospheric, it still knows when to get heavy and just deliver big, punchy, sludgy riffs, which is important, because one of the things with Funeral Doom that I don't like is if you run into a section that you don't like in Funeral Doom, you're going to have to get used to it for a while because the songs run long, and that is very much the thing here. 3 tracks in here are around the 15-minute mark or over the 15-minute mark, so luckily most of this really gelled well, and I wasn't, stuck in a moment that was like, okay, let's just get on with it. There was one, though. The opening to Gray Sky starts off with the only synths that I didn't seem to care for. They sounded more like Norwegian black metal, like, the second wave stuff. While I like that stuff, I generally don't like it when they use synths because they always sounded very cheap and underdone. That is kind of the feel on these. Now, granted, the synths take a big shift later on and really accompany the song much better. Like, she harmonizes with the synth lines, and it's just absolutely beautiful. But the opening section, which goes on for about 2 minutes, kind of dragged. But when the song got going, it was fantastic. The only other thing that I thought sounded kind of out of place was the reprise of What Once Was, which actually comes up before the actual song, which I thought was kind of weird. Generally, the reprise comes later. But this is just a 2.5-minute interlude, roughly. It's acoustic, it's very pretty. The melody is very pleasant, which is a strange thing to say about Funeral Doom, but if you like it, you know that there are some pleasant melodies on there. Not everything's a giant bummer, just 99.9% of it. It's nice, but I don't know, it kind of just serves as like a little interlude, and I think it's good. But as a reprise for a 14-minute long song, or actually that one's over 15 minutes, it's just 2 minutes of a melody that I'm pretty sure is in the main song. It just doesn't stand out amongst all the other killer melodies in that one. Especially that song, because that song is essentially Big Finish after Big Finish. That's the one where that dynamic really just takes over, but it's a really cool dynamic, and I like that song a lot. I like this album a lot. This was literally my first exposure to this band. I had never heard of them until today, and I decided, well, We haven't done anything very doom-laden here in a while, and this will probably make up for it because it is all the doom all the time, but it has this cool gothic appeal where it's kind of like that romanticized gothic doominess. And being a big Paradise Lost fan, that really appealed to me. Granted, this is a ton slower, but I really, really enjoyed this. And the fact that this is one person doing all this and orchestrating all this, this is really, really good. Like, this is well put together, well thought out, well themed. This is a solid release, and yeah, hell of a first impression. So overall, I'm gonna give this 4 stars. This is really solid funeral doom / black metal. It does kind of walk the line between genres, but the heart of it, I think, is around funeral doom and like gothic doom metal. The black metal aspects are there and they are really good, but they don't kind of overtake all the other stuff on here. This is bleak, somber, dreary, every dark adjective ever, but it's soothing, it's melodic. She knows how to deliver melodic hooks, whether they be in the guitars, the synths, the vocals. Melody is such a key thing on here, and it keeps it from just being a giant oppressive bummer. It's still a bummer, but it's a bummer with hooks, and again, being a Paradise Lost fan, I like a good bummer of an album with hooks. So I strongly recommend this one. If you have never heard this band, much like I had never heard this band until today, and you love funeral doom, you are in for a hell of an album, so definitely check this one out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon, so if you'd like to help us out there will be a link below in the description. And we have shirts available. We're pretty much down to XX, XL, and large at this point. But if you or anyone you know fit in those sizes, definitely hit us up on thrallsofmetal@gmail.com. Shoot us some messages there. Make sure to put shirts in the subject matter, and we will get back to you and get your information and get you in a Thrall shirt. So with that, I thank you all for watching, and we will catch you later.